Aram Sheibani took his fight to the Court of Appeal. He was locked up for 37 years after amassing eye-watering wealth through his crimes. An international drugs boss from Greater Manchester who racked up eye-watering wealth and lived a lavish jet-setting lifestyle has lost an appeal against his conviction and sentence. Aram Sheibani, now 43, from Bowdon, Trafford, was jailed for 37 years in June 2021 for his involvement in a high-level cocaine conspiracy over almost a decade. Using money from fraud and drugs, he was found to have amassed a £5 property empire, including an exclusive £1.74 million apartment in Kensington, London, where he had artwork by Banksy and Andy Warhol. The criminal traveled around the world and drove top-of-the-range cars such as a Bentley and a Porsche, all whilst masquerading as a legitimate businessman. Police also found he had more than $1 million in cash, cryptocurrency valued at $1.3 million, original artwork from Banksy and Andy Warhol, and that he had paid for cosmetic surgery including veneers, hair transplants, and a nose job. A judge said his greed knew no boundaries and that he was satisfied Sheibani was at the very head of a large-scale, international drugs conspiracy and was very close to the very source of production in Colombia. Sheibani claimed his wealth had come from legitimate sources, but following an 8-week trial, jurors took just 5 hours to convict him of 20 fraud, money laundering, and drug offenses. Today, judges heard a renewed appeal against both his conviction and his sentence at the Court of Appeal in London. Sheibani's barrister labeled evidence of drug dealing against him as circumstantial as he argued his conviction was unsafe. And he also said there was no evidential basis for him receiving the lengthy sentence he did. Simon Sissoko KC, representing Sheibani, said it was not a case where there was an identified conspiracy, but that the prosecution's case consisted of circumstantial evidence which could have been concluded to be consistent with drug dealing. He said his client was not given an opportunity to bid to have the charges dismissed, and went on to say that evidence that related to drug dealing was put forward into what might be termed a Frankenstein conspiracy, consisting of the parts of more than one conspiracy, whereas the evidence that this was a single conspiracy as against a number of conspiracies. He added that in order to convict, the jury had to be sure Sheibani was guilty of the offenses set out on the indictment and that they are considering the same conspiracy together. He said the judge had not directed the jury about that issue. Lady Justice Macker agreed that if half the jury think it is one conspiracy, and half the jury think it's more than one, it should have been a not guilty verdict. However, she said, but the closing speeches and the directions of the judge to the jury were to the effect that this was a single conspiracy. In relation to Sheibani's sentence, Mr. Sissoko said it wasn't a case where the prosecution identified a quantity of the drugs which was accepted by the judge in his sentencing remarks. He said it was the top quarter of cases which attracted sentences of more than 30 years and claimed there was no evidential basis for the judge to conclude that the conspiracy was of the very highest level. He said it was a wholly exceptional case which has produced a sentence which is completely out of scope with other cases. However, Lady Justice Macker said, this wasn't an ordinary drugs conspiracy case. There was evidence that this applicant had over a very long period of time concerned himself in such a high level of expenditure that it suggested, and I am paraphrasing, the extent and scope of the conspiracy. She added, there was evidence of eye-watering wealth that this applicant could not explain beyond the mortgage frauds. And so was the judge wrong to say that this money, on that evidence, emanated to a significant degree from drug dealing. Both appeals were thrown out by a panel of 3 judges. Lady Justice Macker said the full reasons for their decision would be published in writing in due course. That is the end of the matter as far as this court is concerned, unless anyone finds other evidence to put before the CCRC, she said. Sheibani, then of Dilemma Road, Bowdon, was found guilty of 5 counts of obtaining a money transfer by deception, 3 offenses of possession of criminal property, 2 offenses of failing to comply with a notice, 2 offenses of converting criminal property, 2 offenses of fraud, forgery, using false instruments, conspiracy to supply controlled drugs, possession of a controlled drug of class A, and perverting the course of justice. Passing sentence. At the time of his conviction, Judge Anthony Cross KC said it was impossible to determine the exact involvement of Sheibani's involvement in drug dealing, but he was satisfied he was involved at a high level internationally. I don't believe that the police have been able to uncover all your dealings. The evidence is plainly to the contrary, Judge Cross said. Sergeant Lucy Pearson, of GMP's Economic Crime Unit, said after his sentence that Sheibani was a calculated, deceitful, and scheming criminal. He is a dishonest individual who has not shown any remorse for his actions throughout this entire investigation, refusing to cooperate with police and attempting to destroy evidence, she said. The extent of Sheibani's criminality should not be underestimated. Not only is he involved in tax evasion and money laundering, which has a detrimental effect on the economy and society, resulting in honest taxpayers feeling that burden, but the source of his tainted income is as a result of a class of drugs conspiracy.